Good morning, everyone. It is Thursday, January 27th of 2022. The Richland County Commissioners are now in session. I'm not used to seeing this many people in the Commissioners boardroom here, so I'll go over who's with us. I have the King of Belleville, Commissioner Darrell Banks, the King of Tennis, Commissioner Cliff Mears, our clerk Stacy Crawl,
She's the queen.
the queen of the clerks,
of the whole county.
Mr. Ashland, Andrew Keller, Mr. Wrong College basketball team, our county auditor, Pat Dropsy, who roots for North Carolina, and they lose by 80 points. And our maintenance guys who have recovered from frostbite after spending all day and night outside working on a water main repair, if it wasn't a main, a water pipe repair. Chuck Minnick and Josh Hicks. And before we get started, we definitely want to go on the record and say thank you to you guys. Chuck had icicles coming off his face yesterday when I went down there to check it out.
They don't look thawed out yet.
I know. So, Chuck, real quick, you kind of want to update us on how the repair went, and it's important. Maybe the media might have some questions.
Sure. It ended up being the main coming in the building. It was 4-inch cast iron main. We missed it several times trying to locate the water problem, but finally found it. Ended up being just a fractured pipe. Really no reason that it should have fractured besides there was a good sized rock near it. So we're kind of wondering if it did finally put enough pressure on to break it. So we actually got a sleeve from the city of Mansfield, was gracious enough to give us one for the night. Got us back up and running last night and backfilled it with wash gravel and got to today and we're up and running. So.
And by missed it for the media, that is not an implication that we don't know what we're doing. We had to try to do our best to determine where the issue was. So There's a little bit of trial and error. So this isn't us with the blindfold just going, we don't know where it is. I mean,
we knew where the water line was. Let me clarify that a little bit. We knew where the water line was. We just didn't know where the break was, and the water went sideways for 40 some feet. Pretty powerful, so it made it look like the water leak was somewhere different than it was. So that's what I mean by missed it. We just, we're thinking we're on top of it, and we wasn't on top of it. Just had to keep digging.
And I can report we did not find Jimmy Hoffa down there, so he still remains missing. So in case you're wondering, we can check that off. The Giants end zone and Richland County gated parking lot, he's not there. So any questions on that?
Yeah, Chuck, how deep was the line that you had to get to?
It was down 5 foot.
What side of the building was it on?
It was on the south side of the building, back side along 2nd Street. Our service comes off of Diamond Street down through the wall and across the whole back parking lot for water service from Mansfield City.
Any damage to pavement or the parking lots or anything like that that's going to have to be fixed?
Yeah, we got a big chunk of concrete that is going to have to be poured at the end of this.
Carl, not that I want anything to go wrong, but nothing gives me greater joy in life for Judge Robinson and Judge Namoff to lose their cushy garage spots and have to slum it like the rest of us. So not that I wanted anything to go wrong, but I'm going to enjoy having watched them walk into the building. So, if you want to tweak them a little bit, go ahead.
You do know, Mr. Bureau, that if the judges decide, they'll just take your spot under power of authority of court, and you can park on Diamond Street.
False. They don't have authority over that spot.
We're outside.
And we're outside anyway, so that would be a downgrade for them too.
I would be very careful telling a common pleas court judge he doesn't have the authority to do X.
So that's it in a nutshell. Al, you
need to hear it.
Al?
Yeah, I'm fine. My fingers don't always want to operate a touch screen.
You're good?
Yep. I'm fine.
All right, then. Let's move on to our agenda items. Pat and Andrew are going to discuss some ARPA matters for some of it's procedural, the others in some more substance. So let's talk about a new declaration of revenue loss and why we are doing so today. Andrew, take it away.
Well, the auditor and I have had the pleasure of looking at the new final rule issued by the Treasury on January 6th. And just as a reminder, the Treasury issued the interim final rule, as they captioned it, in May of 2021. And that's been in effect for the better part of the American Rescue Plan Act's existence up until January 6th. And the final rule's been released. As if 151 pages wasn't enough in the interim final rule, the final rule is 437 pages. So we've been looking at that to try to figure out how to
Wait, let me clarify that. There was no we. Andrew has been looking at that.
We're trying to leverage those 437 pages for the county as much as possible. Without going into the details, I think the most significant takeaway for counties from the final rule was changing the methodology for calculating your revenue loss. Under the interim final rule, it was a complex calculation, which Auditor Dropsy spent a lot of time getting it right and calculating our projected revenue loss which was somewhere, the initial calculation was a little over $3 million.
Like 3.2 and some change.
Mm-hmm. And projecting that over the next 3 years, it looked like it was going to total possibly upwards of 4 million over.
Slightly more than that, but not much.
Okay, between 4 and 5 million over that period of time. Well, under the final rule, all recipients of ARPA dollars are now entitled to a $10 million revenue loss presumption. No calculation is necessary. It's able to be presumed that your revenue loss is $10 million. The advantage of that for Richland County, of course, is revenue loss dollars can be used to pay for government services. So traditional county services that our taxpayers are used to the county government providing. So that makes sense for the county to take advantage of that. Again, as a reminder, our federal award was $23.4 million total. 10 million of that now the commissioners can declare as revenue loss and use that money for appropriate county government services. So the example of that could be roads or building improvements or simple repairs of permanent improvements. It also can pay for day-to-day operations. But in order to do that, in order to take advantage of that, the commissioners need to formally declare $10 million to be the revenue loss. This also happens to be a big advantage for our municipalities all across the county, villages, cities, and all of our townships, all 18 townships, because with the exception of the city of Mansfield, every ARPA award to every political subdivision in the county was under $10 million. So that means their entire award can be used for traditional services, again, that those jurisdictions, constituents expect tax dollars to be used for. So it's a real advantage for those communities. Of course, with the county and the city, our award exceeded $10 million. So we're still going to have a lot of money to invest into the eligible expenditure categories. So we've prepared a resolution for the commissioners to sign to declare this $10 million revenue loss. Pat and I have had a lot of conversation about this and have concluded that it's going to be advantageous to the commissioners to declare the 10 million as revenue loss because we don't believe the calculation going with the calculation option, we believe would be less than 10 million. So
Significantly less.
All right, so we'll take that motion, then I'm sure the media will have some questions. So this time I'll ask for a motion that we make our American Rescue Plan Act revenue loss declaration $10 million per the final rule of the guidelines, per the final rule, excuse me.
So moved. Second.
Rivera,
Yes.
Commissioner Mears,
Yes.
Commissioner Banks.
Yes.
All right. That's good news. And let's be clear too, is obviously we have government services that we're going to use the money for. You'll see a little bit today, but this, we have that Rescue Plan Act steering committee that we talk about community partnership for long-term benefits of our community. This makes it better for us on that end too. So this is not just a good thing for internal, meaning Richland County government. This is a good thing as a whole for bigger community projects. So we need to be very clear. This isn't, okay, now we have 10 million. We're just going to plan on using it internal. This allows us some flexibility as well. Let's go ahead, media.
Yeah, Andrew, did you say January 6th or January 26th for the release of the what's now new final rule?
January 6th.
Okay. And I'll throw this out. It could be Andrew, could be Pat, or it could be the commissioners. Just because you declare a $10 million revenue loss does not prohibit you from using that money in ways that you would have used it if it was not declared revenue loss. I mean, you could still use it for the same kind of capital, big ticket projects that you might have been considering, correct? This doesn't preclude you from doing that.
Once you make that declaration, at that point, you have very broad latitude to answer your question. So yes, you can use it towards permanent improvements. However, that money is reserved specifically for government services at that point.
But Carl, honestly, I think you'd have a hard time arguing that the other buckets in which you could use the money wouldn't be government services anyway. So this, again, it goes back to what I said, is this is a good thing, not a bad thing. It allows us more flexibility to use the dollars.
So Tony, what I'm hearing here is that basically anything that you would decide to do would fall under the umbrella of some form of government services. And
I know better.
Andrew's going to blanch when I say that, because I know the answer is going to be yes, if.
Right. That's exactly. Look, I'm not going to say 100%, but let's use an example of water improvement projects, right? I'm going to feel confident in saying I would have a hard time saying a water improvement project permitted under the 4 other eligible uses would not be considered a government service under that declaration. You follow?
Right. So let's just throw out a hypothetical. You were going to spend $2 million on a water project out of the 23.4. Well, you could still spend $2 million out of the 10 on that same water project because it does fall under quote unquote government services.
That's a great example. And the answer is yes to that. And in fact, there'd be some advantages to using revenue loss because the federal reporting is significantly less. It's also, it appears you wouldn't have to go through the written justification process. Anyway, there's complex reporting requirements tied to all of your federal expenditures, and they are less for the revenue loss expenditures. So yeah, it'd be a different bucket, but you could use it for that kind of a project as well, because it is a government service, Carl.
Okay. And so much of the interim, temporary, yet to be final rules said so much about census tracts and qualified census tracts. When you set aside the 10 million, does the flexibility granted through that really kind of lessen because there aren't a lot of qualified census tracts in the county, they're primarily in the city. So does that kind of ease those a little bit?
Yeah, flexibility is the name of the game with the final rule. Increased flexibility, both with respect to the revenue loss bucket, but also water and wastewater, premium pay, and general COVID mitigation. It increased the flexibility, which, I was very well received across the country, because governments felt a little hamstrung on the interim final rule, and that was they gave a little bit more leash in the final rule to the use of these dollars. Certainly, a lot of regulations still apply, but like you say, Carl, with the revenue loss, it's its application is pretty broad. So in fact, we're going to be discussing a couple of revenue loss awards yet this morning. So
What do you think, Andrew? Is it that local government response to the interim? Is that what led the Treasury to come up with this? And is this the final, or will there be a final, as government is apt to do at some point?
that's a great question. And I would never speculate as to what the federal government might do next. Although it is expected that this is the final rule. What was your first question there, Carl?
What do you think led to was it the kind of response from local governments that led the Treasury to kind of loosen this up?
It was, as a part of the federal rulemaking process, they accept comment and feedback from jurisdictions all over the country. And so they literally compile and condense questions from all over the country, questions and comments. And then they tell you that they rely on that as they draft the final rule. And in this, there was hundreds and even thousands of comments submitted to Treasury prior to the issuance of the final rule. And in fact, if you look at the final rule, they'll even quote, italicized questions and then answer those questions right within the final rule. So.
Okay, I think that's it for me. Thanks.
Al?
Yeah, I got a couple. What kinds of things are you looking at now that and looking to add now that things are a little more open in how you can spend the money?
Well, I think you'll see us do the fourth courtroom, Al. We're going to have the judges come back down here as COVID continues to be at the forefront. They're being very kind. So they're just saying, hey, it would be very beneficial for us to really get moving on that fourth courtroom. Now, we were probably going to look at doing that with the original revenue loss declaration. So I don't think that changes much. So as of now, we're trying to be judicious with how we're using this to go in line with the Rescue Plan Act Steering Committee. You'll see a couple projects that chuck some equipment purchases, which we had talked about during the budget cycle. But we're gonna be mindful of this and really look at projects that will benefit the taxpayers and the community long term, like the fourth courtroom. I know that doesn't sound like much. That's a big deal. We have two spaces of this building that have gone unused other than to be a storage facility. And to truly utilize the capacity of the building, while it doesn't sound, allow me to say it, sexy, it's a big deal to have a fourth courtroom to allow us to process justice faster, to give a better area for the clerks. The community will benefit from that.
Cool.
So go ahead, Andrew.
I was going to say COVID has really impacted the courts.
Yes.
And in fact, it's really telling when you talk to the judges and the administrative staff to really wrap your mind around what COVID has done, both with respect to jury pools and social distancing. And there is a backlog. And in fact, the final rule specifically contemplates that courts have incurred backlogs because of COVID. It's just a fact. And there's no question that an additional courtroom will help alleviate some of that backlog, because the courts are limited by their space.
Carl, now we have a long list of capital improvements that we would like to do. And we're going to take a close look at those and try to get some more of them done too. Things that will help everybody in the county.
Yeah, you mentioned that steering committee? Have they discussed any potential things so far?
I don't think it's a steering committee. In my opinion, it's an advisory committee. They're going to give us advice. They're not steering.
That's
I've made that clear
sorry,
several times, and I want that to be clear.
So yeah, whether it's an advisory, Daryl's right, but the committee's been very mindful of knowing that At the Daryl's. So yes, Carl, but
Hurt.
No, Al was the one who asked the
or
question.
Al, sorry. Yes. I would ask that you actually call Brady Groves, who's paying for the Greater Ohio Policy Center. So I don't want to speak to that. There are some bigger term projects, potential for a community center, particularly in the north end. That seems to be that has gotten some initial traction with the committees. But I'm mindful. I'm on the committee. I'm obviously decision maker here, but I would ask that you call Brady on that, maybe.
Okay. That's all the questions I had.
Carl, you good?
Yep.
All right.
Someone else joined.
Oh, we have
Any other questions?
who is it, Stacy?
I don't know.
Tony, this is Greg from WMFT.
Oh.
Brady Groves, is he the chairman of the Rescue Act Steering Committee?
Actually, Tim Thaker and I are deemed the co-chairs, but it's the foundation serves as the hub because they're writing the check. So Brady is the head of
Okay.
the Richland County Foundation.
Okay. That's all I got.
All right. Thank you, Patrick. Try to keep it within 20 next time. All right.
We're not done.
Oh, you're sticking around for the next piece?
Well, yeah, and I have to make sure it gets approved so I can cut a check.
Okay. So, Mr. Keller, next up in ARPA world, we have a revision to our procurement policies and procedures. So please talk to us today on the need for a revision.
Yes, well, the commissioners approved the first procurement policy in November of last year. And there's a reason at the bottom of the page, even at that time, it said version 1 with a date, knowing that there would be subsequent iterations. And this is version 2. It's just a couple of housekeeping updates. We include, for example, as we get ready to, work with the sheriff's office, to, acquire some cruisers through the revenue loss bucket, we need to follow the requirements of federal procurement law. And so I've updated that to allow for us to consider state cooperative purchasing or the General Services Administration, if that makes sense for the sheriff, in a way that still comports with the federal requirements. So that you'd see that on the first page of Exhibit 1, which is the first attachment. Also, we've added a provision that deals with a bit of steps the county will take back to minority-owned, women-owned, and small business vendors. So, for certain procurements, obviously, that's going to make a lot of sense, and we want to have a commitment to that, and that's also required by the federal rules. So we figured the best place for that would be in our procurement policy. And those are really the two substantive updates there.
So with all that said, I guess we'll ask for a motion, then they can ask questions. Motion to approve?
Second.
I have this one.
Rivera,
Yes.
Commissioner Mears,
Yes.
Commissioner Banks.
Yes.
All right, Carl and Al, any questions about the exciting land of policies and procedures?
There's nothing I like more than a good federal procurement policy discussion, but we'll save that for another day. But this might back up to what we were talking about a minute ago. I was just thinking about it. The county gets $23.4 million in ARPA funds. And if you're going to declare a $10 million revenue loss, does that come out of both years combined? Does it come out of the first year? How do you determine where that $10 million is going to come from?
It's flexible. Our first tranche was 11. Well, it was a half of 23.4. So between an 11 and $12 million. So theoretically, it could come out of entirely out of the first tranche. Although I don't believe that'll happen because looking at the numbers, we've already obligated $1 million for our travel, tourism, and hospitality grant program. So it'll,
2 for broadband,
what's that?
2 for broadband.
Yeah, 2 for broadband. So it'll just, whenever it naturally makes sense, but it doesn't have to be declared out of the first or second tranche. And really, we'll be receiving our second disbursement this year, at which point that'll be the entirety of what we're going to receive. And of course, that can be used all the way through 2026 if it's obligated by 2024. So,
Yeah, Carl, we'll get it before we can spend it. Can you believe that? Huh? So
Well,
it's really a moot point. We'll have all the money before we would spend the revenue loss.
Well, that led me to a question that I don't know whether Andrew or the commissioners want to address. Knowing there would since the original was listed as an interim final last summer or last May, whenever it came out, knowing there would be a likely change in the ARPA rules, does that speak to the wisdom of kind of waiting to make decisions on how to spend the money? I mean, there are some communities around here and elsewhere around the state that I've looked where they've pretty much spent that first year.
So I think we've even talked about that on the record a little bit, Carl, and then you and I in just conversations about ARPA. You are 100% correct. That is exactly one of the reasons. It's not the only, but it is exactly why we waited, because we learned our lessons from the coronavirus relief funding is, you move towards a target, and then I wasn't upset with some of the changes, and like these, I like these changes, but we knew changes would be forthcoming. We knew the final rule would be forthcoming. And so we didn't want to commit our we didn't want to throw all our chips into the center of the table without knowing what our cards were.
Carl, we appreciate the reference to wisdom from the board.
Yeah, if you want to say we have wisdom, we'll be okay with that in the paper.
Well, there's wisdom among at least 2 of you, Daryl.
Talk about Cliff.
Because he's new.
I know.
Give him a chance
We knew
to-
Maryland would never have the wisdom, but I mean, we thought Cliff had a chance.
That's all I had on that. Thanks, guys.
All right. And throw in handsome next to wisdom too, if you're talking about the Italian.
Hey, Cliff may not have the experience, but he's got the wisdom of age.
Something. All right. So now we had talked about this in the budget cycle. So again, we're not going to just be spending all our revenue loss on drips and drabs of some minor equipment purchasing. Not that this is minor, Chuck,
No.
but we did talk about this. And if there was anything for the importance of having functioning equipment, yesterday was an example of that. So as part of the budget process in December, we discussed using some small amounts of our rescue plan monies for some equipment purchases in the maintenance department. So we're following through. Talk to us, Mr. Minnick.
Sure. The 2 requests that we had was to update a SCAG zero-turn mower, which we got quotes from, and it's actually a state contract. Came in at $14,616. Plus, there's a piece that goes on. They call it a chute blocker that helps us not spraying grass on people's cars and stuff that we want to purchase with the mower, which is a $377 upgrade to the mower. So it's them 2. I didn't add them together, but whatever them 2 come up to. Oh, sorry, that was the final price. The $14,616 is the final price with the chute blocker. Sorry, that was my mistake.
So we are not using large amounts of our rescue plan act, but we did discuss this as part of the budget process. So before Carl goes and writing that the commissioners are just spending it on pieces of equipment, let's be clear, we still have a big
I
project.
think Chuck's got another piece of equipment he wants.
Yeah, then the second piece is we're wanting to update a 2007 truck that's getting pretty structurally insecure with another used truck. We're looking at a used truck at Sharpnack Chevy. We went and negotiated a price and came out with a price of $35,878.51. And we actually looked at Kelly's blue book value and stuff, and we're actually below that, which is remarkable in the time frame we're in of finding something that's actually below the price of a blue book value. So it's a nice truck. It's got 21,000 miles on it.
What year is it?
It's a 2019. So
Are those numbers out the door, Chuck? I mean,
Yeah, that's out the door.
The check will be for that.
right, that's exactly right. The check would be for that amount out the door.
Okay, motion to approve.
So move.
Second.
And you know what? If we could have, a motion to approve the purchase for each, and then also a separate motion to approve this part of notice of expenditure. Memorialize it.
This motion is to authorize the purchase. You move,
I moved.
Commissioner Vero,
Yes.
Commissioner Mears,
Yes.
Commissioner Banks.
Yes.
Okay, next we need a motion to approve the notice of ARPA expenditure. So we hired the great legal mind of Andrew Keller to comply with our guidelines. So I'll ask for that motion.
So moved.
Second.
Commissioner Vero,
Yes.
Commissioner Mears,
Yes.
Commissioner Banks.
Yes.
Andrew, just sign anywhere on there then?
You don't even need to sign it.
Oh, sweet. Okay.
Document that we'll keep in the file with that.
Do you want it or does Stacy want it?
I'll need it
Okay.
copy and then I can,
I can print my own since it doesn't have a signature on it.
okay.
Okay, now questions from Laurel and Hardy.
Okay, Chuck, I just want to make sure that I'm using terminology. When you say update a zero-turn mower, I assume you mean buy a new zero-turn mower.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. All right. I just wanted to make sure because sometimes the words update means you're going to fix something, but in this
Yeah.
case,
Now
the mower and the truck, what kind of truck is this?
it's a Chevy Silverado custom double cab.
That's what I needed. Thanks.
So Chuck, do you have a mower we're going to sell then?
We're gonna keep it for now. It's just, we actually got rid of a mower mid-year that wasn't a great asset to us that we mainly use during the winter. So this one that we're gonna buy will be our primary mower. Then we'll use this one for a secondary that we're gonna keep. But we are gonna ask permission to advertise the 2007 Chevy truck to get rid of that.
There you go, Carl. You can buy our truck.
How many miles on that truck, Chuck?
107,000.
That's not bad. I might have to look. I'll keep an eye on Gov Deals or wherever.
You may want to come look at the truck first.
Yeah, you have it.
It does run good. It's just, it's structurally got some issues.
Do we call that caveat emptor, Aaron or Andrew? Buyer beware, Carl.
Yeah.
Well, I have some structural issues myself, but that's okay.
All right. Is that it for ARPA today? Goodness. All right. All right, gentlemen. Thank you.
Thanks for your mark.
All right, let's go through the remaining of our logistical items before we have Carl's favorite executive session. He always thinks we're up to hijinks in there. Motion to certify the regular proceedings for January 25th of 2022.
So moved.
Second.
Commissioner Vero,
Yes.
Commissioner Mears,
Yes.
Commissioner Banks.
Yes.
Yes, Chuck.
Okay.
For one more topic, but we wanted to talk about the wall downstairs. Is that
All right, we have like 4 more things and then we'll get you, Chuck.
Okay.
Motion to approve requisition.
So moved.
Second.
Commissioner Vero,
Yes.
Commissioner Mears,
Yes.
Commissioner Banks.
Yes.
Okay, we had some add-ons that we will allow since we had the water issue yesterday for month-end transfers and appropriations. So motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Commissioner Vero,
Yes.
Commissioner Mears,
Yes.
Commissioner Banks.
Yes.
All right, next up, we have a request from our Executive Director of Regional Planning, Joda Cachetti. She's asking for an extension of 2 CDBG projects. We know at today's COVID age, how supply chains and how much fun that is. So she's requesting that we authorize an extension on the grant for the Area Agency on Aging and Day Spring Nurses Edition. So may we have that motion?
So move.
Second.
Commissioner Vero,
Yes.
Commissioner Mears,
Yes.
Commissioner Banks.
Yes.
Okay. Last of our logistical items is a request from our wastewater director, Amanda Miller. This is fairly standard. Sometimes we need assistance from outside companies for systems cleaning. So she is requesting that we enter into an agreement with K.E. McCartney and Associates for said items. And it's an amount not to exceed $5,000. So this is not a extremely high cleaning contract.
So moved.
Second.
Commissioner Barrow.
Yes.
Commissioner Mears.
Yes.
Commissioner Banks.
Yes.
All right, that is the end of our logistical items. Before we go back to Chuck, any questions from Carl, Al, or Greg?
No, I'll wait and comment on your string of executive sessions before you enter into them.
Okay. All right, Chuck.
We was,
Hey, hang on a second, Tony. I did have one question on that delay for regional planning that Jodica was asking for. That was 2 different projects.
Yes.
What was the one area aging, agency on aging?
They're both, hold on a second. What's that?
Dayspring.
Day Springs for the nurses. The area agency is, all I got was a request. Stacy, what was it?
I'll have to look out. I don't know if that was their lunch and learn,
I think it is the
computers.
yeah, I think that's what it is.
I'll have to look and let you know.
We'll get that to you, Al.
Okay, that's all I had.
And Al, the extension was originally from December 31st, 2022 to August 31st, 2022.
Shame on me for not getting with Jodica. True blank there. That's my bad, Al. Pretty standard, so.
What
That's my
standard
fault.
that you're bad?
Yeah. You must be talking to my wife or daughter. She told me she needed a new father yesterday.
Hey, I'll tell you what. I've got a not quite 2-year-old granddaughter who I think, in terms of holding fits would put your daughter to shame.
Oh, I was informed I didn't comb her hair properly, so she needed a new father.
Good enough
Okay.
reason.
So sorry about that, Al. That's my bad on as being chair. I should have known that. All right, Chuck.
yeah, we was asked by Bart Hamilton to look at the land bank where they have their offices in L1 down there to secure a boardroom that when they go into executive session that they could actually be separated from the community. So we actually looked at putting a wall in down there with a new entryway into make it like a secured suite for them. With the entryway, it's low, right at $2,300, and with the drywall and stud work, we're probably going to be scaring real close to $3,000. We was wanting to know if you want us to go ahead with this, where the money would come from to do this project, and
So Andrew, I'm going to ask you, may I speak on this as a commissioner or as a land bank member? Same with Cliff.
You're sitting as a commissioner right now.
Okay. So I think that's a good idea as a commissioner and a land bank member. I also know the land bank has enough money in their coffers to pay for a $3,000 addition. So I would say the land bank should run that through as an expense through the land bank.
So need approval from them before Chuck would.
yeah,
Continue.
proceed though.
Yes.
That's something we really do need. We plan to continue to do business down there, and it's rather awkward.
Yeah, people walk through. We have staff members walking through constantly during meetings, as Carl knows. So I think that's needed, but the land bank has $1 million in the bank account. I know they're looking at some demos, but we as land bank members can come up with the $3,000.
So this would go from the door where Kissy's desk is straight across.
Yes.
Makes sense.
And the door would be if you're looking in at her, it would be to the right side of that then.
Yeah.
It's like a closet there.
Yeah, Carl and Al have seen it. It's obviously awkward. We're talking about people are coming in and out of that door constantly.
I mean,
Probation, right?
Yeah, probation. There's a lot of traffic through that door, so it'll just make it a hallway, which is what intended to be.
Yeah.
Yes.
Build that wall.
Any money you got left over?
Is that Bart Hamilton advocating to build the wall? Is that our fellow Democrat? Tell him that.
He made it clear it's a wall with a door, though.
All right. Carl, friend Democrat wants to build a wall in county, please.
Just yet another example of government trying to shield the public from their work. That's all I know.
You can still come in the door, Carl.
I was gonna say,
Yeah.
I don't think there's any way, Carl, now you guys can objectively report on that one.
Although after Al's insult, I'll work to keep him out and ask Lou come in his stead.
So we'll wait to hear back from you guys, see if they pass that motion. And
Now,
then
Bart wasn't asking the commissioners to come up with the money, was he?
yeah, I think,
Oh, come on, Bart.
yeah, he was.
Tell him no chance. The land bank can pay for it.
Okay.
All right. Any questions, media friends?
Now, the only odd thing I have, do you expect any kind of significant action after any of the executive sessions?
We expect to hire in CSEA. Clerk of Courts is going to be interesting. Daryl, you're the liaison. Are we going to take action?
Probably not. We have a discussion and somewhere down the road.
And day spring discipline is a possibility.
I can
Okay,
let you
but-
both,
I'm
I
sorry,
can let
go
you-
ahead.
yeah, I was gonna say, I can let you both know if you want to.
Yeah, that sounds fine to me.
Yeah, that'll work. Just always want to caution the government to do the public's work in public whenever and wherever possible. Thank you.
We are aware, Mr. Hunnell, and I promise if there is action to take, we will come out and note it appropriately in a public meeting.
God bless you and yours.
Likewise. All right, we'll come back into session. We'll recess and come back at 10:30.
plans that you developed.
Stacy, job descriptions of them. Probably have.
All right. It is 10:31. Your Richland County Board of Commissioners are back in session. At this time, I'll ask for a motion that we go into executive session for the hiring of public employees.
So move.
Second.
Commissioner Barrow,
Yes.
Commissioner Mears,
Yes.
Commissioner Banks.
Yes.
Okay, it is 10:36 and we are back in session. This time I'll ask for a motion that we post 2 jobs internally from January 28th through February 9th. Those jobs are the Chief Fiscal Officer and the Fiscal Specialist.
So moved.
Second.
Commissioner Barrow,
Yes.
Commissioner Mears,
Yes.
Commissioner Banks.
Yes.
Anyone out there in media land?
No.
Okay, we will recess until 10:45. Okay, busy day today. It's 10:45. Richland County Board of Commissioners are back in session. This time I will ask for motion to go in executive session for discussion on compensation in our clerk of court's office.
So moved.
Second.
Rivera,
Yes.
Commissioner Mears,
Yes.
Commissioner Banks.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, it's 11:19, and Richland County Board of Commissioners back in session. We had a very productive conversation with our clerk of courts on compensation in her office, and she's going to do some additional research. And we'll have some more on that here in the near future.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Frary.
Sorry.
All right, we're a little behind, but it's a busy day. So at this time, I'll ask for a motion to go into executive session to discuss potential disciplinary action at our Day Spring facility.
So move.
Second.
Commissioner Barrow,
Yes.
Commissioner Mears,
Yes.
Commissioner Banks.
Yes.
Okay, it is 11:26. Your Richland County Board of Commissioners is back in session. This time I will ask for a motion to assess a 3-day working suspension for a 3rd and 4th Group 1 offense at our Day Spring facility.
Moved. Second.
Group 1 offense, you said.
3rd and 4th Group 1 offense. Yep.
Commissioner Vero,
Yes.
Commissioner Mears.
Yes.
Commissioner Banks.
Yes.
Michelle, I'll get the paperwork to you.
Great. Thank you very much, guys. Have a good day. Yep.
Two.
Oh, sorry. Seeing any further business out there, we will adjourn for the week at 11:27 a.m.